Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the third book in the First Law series, The Last Argument of Kings. I have a physical copy over there, but I didn't grab it. But because this one I listened to the audiobook, because so many people recommended that I listen to the audiobook. I listened to snippets of it for the second one and kind of was going back and forth, but this time I did just the audiobook. And I understand why everybody was recommending it because the narrator is really, really good. Normally, I have trouble with the mixing of the two because my internal voice will overtake the narrator's voice, especially if I've established an internal voice first. But this one, the narrator was just so good, and he gave so much extra personality to all the characters and stuff that it sticks. So anytime I do like a reread, it's definitely going to be audiobook version, or at least that is going to be the internal voice I hear now. So yeah, we're going to definitely go ahead and talk about the third book in the First Law trilogy, or the first trilogy. And this is going to be like a part one because I want to do another video where I talk about the trilogy as a whole, because this is like the first true grim dark series that I've read. And apparently Joe on Twitter goes by Lord Grimdark, so I guess that firmly establishes this book series as grimdark. So I want to kind of give my overall opinions about that, but we'll do that in the second video so that this one isn't really, really long. So yeah, with that being said, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, the First Law series, The Last Argument of Kings, the third book in the First Law. That's so awkward to say. The last book in the First Law trilogy. That is goofy. So yeah, we're gonna start off and do a little bit of non-spoilery stuff, and then jump into spoilers. But the non-spoilery part, very, very short, because third book in the series. If you don't know what's going on now, then I don't know why you're even watching this video. So non-spoilery thoughts. So the book, of course, continues where we left off from the last one, and we kind of get this interesting juxtaposition from a story that is very kind of Tolkien reminiscent, kind of, classical fantasy stuff, there and back again, kind of tale of a journey and stuff, and character development and stuff. So we pick up on there, and then almost immediately, like kind of in a kind of fly in the face of that idea, our party immediately scatters. Like immediately scatters to the four winds. So kind of like the first book, we have separate locations and separate setups and stuff. So it's really interesting the way it continues, because this book almost feels like two books, because the continuation, or what feels almost like a really long epilogue to book two, it's kind of the first quarter of this book. So we kind of get a lot of that like residual stuff, and then everything splits and it becomes this entirely other thing. So it's really interesting. So I really like that, and if you haven't read it, I definitely recommend you continue the series, because this one definitely sets it off. If you're on the fence about the first two and you somehow still kept going and are on the fence about reading the third one, I definitely say finish it, because this one rounds the entire series. Like, it just well rounds it so perfectly. So with that being said, we're going to talk spoilers so I can actually talk about this. So yeah, spoilers for The Last Argument of Kings. So holy crap, Baez is a mastermind. Like, oh, that was my biggest takeaway from this book. Baez is a slimy, manipulative, lying, immortal bastard. And I love it, because it is such a cool thing to do, because my biases and as a fantasy reader completely preserved all the twists and turns for me in this story. I knew going in it was fairly grimdark, but I wasn't really associating it with any of the tropes or cliches of grimdark at all. I was just kind of seeing what these characters, where they place and stuff. That's why in my first two, I kind of talk about how Logan kind of feels like a typical fantasy protagonist and stuff like that. So it's just really interesting to see that this character, who, because he is very clearly an old wizard character, I just assumed he was going to have this, he already showed a lot of grandfatherly air, a lot of like nice kind of stuff. I mean, and honestly, that is kind of who he is. But on top of being this grandfatherly figure, this very Gandalf-esque kind of character, he is just what I think a person like that would become in real life. If you have access to magic, and it is incredibly rare, and you're not only a magic user, but you're like, apart from the near god level people, you are the first of the magi. You are the first, like, you're the most important of these human level magic users. So the arrogance that would automatically instill is totally understandable. And then his immortality, in comparison to, like, as he says, these people's lives are like a blink of an eye, it kind of makes sense. So even though he's a terrible person, kind of repugnant and very, like, not even totally off-putting, that's one of the things about I'm noticing about Joe Abercrombie's characters. They are kind of repugnant, but they're very charming and compelling. So it's really hard to be like, oh, you're terrible, but you're really like, I want to know what else is going to happen, because like Glocta and stuff like that. So yeah, let me ramble about Baez a little bit more. So Baez has been essentially working this master plan for centuries or decades. I think this incarnation one has only been decades, but he's been apparently secretly running the entirety of the Union forever. And he just comes in and installs a puppet king or whatever and be like, okay, then install somebody he can trust and stuff, like, okay, guide them and do this and blah, 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 and do that. So he's essentially been the ruler of the Union for 1,000 years. And it's such a cool idea. I really like that level of manipulation, and it kind of sets up this huge big bad, because the trilogy kind of in and of itself doesn't have a true plot. It doesn't have a beginning to end kind of plot. There's just a lot of things that are happening, and we're very much just following these people. And it's this very, in my opinion, realistic world, this very gray world of morality. Just his morality wise, it's incredibly gray. So it's just all these characters that are definitely chaotic neutral all over the place. And some of them think they're, good, lawful good. Some of them think that they're like lawful neutral, or even in Glocta's case, think that they're like lawful evil, essentially. But they're kind of not. It's everything. It's so many layers of gray, and I just really, really like it. So, okay, that's the first little bit of rambling. I really think Baez's entire plan is just kind of really, really cool. The way he did it, the way he executed it, and then the way he basically told Giselle, like, you are replaceable. Like, I can get rid of you that easily. And I'm like, okay. And then to reveal that he wasn't actually the bastard son of the former king or whatever. He's a abandoned child of a prostitute that Baez just paid her like 6 marks. She wanted 20 and he lowballed her. Like, oh my God, that's a detail that you didn't really even have to add in. But just that little detail just adds so much context to the character who Baez is. And I'm like, wow, it's just such good character writing. The entire series is just so much character writing, which is something else that I kind of accepted, because the magic system, while it's mostly a soft magic system, it's still incredibly vague. There are some soft magic systems that you learn a lot about. You even understand the origin. You start to get a sense of the power scaling of people, like how powerful this person is relative to that person. You get none of that in this. Like, there's none of that. This is like, I mean, it's hard to call it bad or say it's like some of the worst magic world building I've read, because the way it's like set up and stuff. It's hard to say that because it's clearly on purpose. Like, even the idea of the light plot, the near non-plot that this series has, it's clearly designed. It's clearly a part of the design that Joe was going for. So it's hard for me to count it as a negative, because as I've mentioned before, I really try to approach books and these kind of things, books and art and pretty much all things like that, from the creator's perspective, from not even necessarily their perspective, but more from the, like, what does the creator want me to get out of this? So that's kind of how I went into it. I didn't want to superimpose any of my impressions and assumptions from other fantasy reads onto this. So I'm just like, what is Joe telling us with this story? I'm very much trying to do that. And I think I really enjoy the series because I was able to do that and come at it from that perspective, because the way this wraps the entire series together is just so, so good. So that was one ramble, so let me go ahead and just kind of talk about the book itself, the plot, and everything that happens. So I already mentioned a little bit of non-spoiler part that when we come back from the there and back again type journey, everyone kind of scatters, right? So we have this situation where Giselle is about to go off on his own. He's even in his head contemplate leaving the army so he can go be with Audie. He can go be with Colum West's sister and like go be with her because he fell in love with her and stuff, and like, he can't really let her go and all this stuff. So he's like really thinking about giving up all this stuff and like going to just go live off this nice little happy life and stuff. So as we kind of learn, and it was a really cool scene, him leaving Logan. Like, he's really come to really care about Logan. Like, he sees him as his big brother and stuff. And I really love that dynamic and that relationship. It's a great capstone piece to me of the great level of development we saw and before they are hanged. Like the Giselle development that happened in that due to his injury was awesome. And I love the fact that it is both carried through while it kind of backsteps a little bit, because while that development was great to see and it's like believably done, it would be a little unbelievable if just that one scenario just completely hardline changed who he is and he stayed changed forever. So I like the fact that all that development is there and you can see it. He is a much better person than he was, but the core of who he was even then is still kind of there. Like his shallow nature and stuff, and easily accepting that he can't be with Audie or make her queen, essentially, because she's a commoner and stuff. So before we get into that, I want to kind of talk about a little bit about what Baez did. So when we get back, Giselle is essentially immediately promoted because there's rumors going around that he did great stuff when they went to the edge of the world and stuff, even though we know he didn't do much of anything. But Baez has been spreading these rumors, so now people think he's awesome, and then they make him colonel. And then almost immediately after making him colonel, they're like, we need you to go deal with this citizen revolt that's kind of brewing. The peasants are like uprising, or, you know, having an uprising or whatever. Like, so go deal with it. He's like, I don't know what to do. You just made me colonel like 3 minutes ago. So you completely understand his apprehension and his fear and stuff like that. Like, what's going on? Like, you know, just completely thrown into the deep end and stuff. So he goes to deal with it, and he tries to just basically say the speech that they gave him to say. And then immediately the leader of the whole situation folds and be like, these are good conditions. All right, everybody back to your homes and all this kind of stuff. And it just kind of works. And Giselle is sitting there like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I expected this to be a lot more dramatic. And like all this, even the guy who accepts the terms, he starts to like get yelled at by one of the other people. They're like, you said that we're suing for more. Like we're, you know, protesting this stuff to get more like actual rights and, you know, citizen rights and stuff like this. And dude's like, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. You later find out he's actually on Baez's side. And this whole thing is basically a plan to make Giselle look good. So it's really interesting the way these plans just go in depth, because I left that scene feeling just like Giselle. I'm like, what happened? What's going on? Like, how does this work? There's more to this, because that doesn't make any sense what just happened. So I was very suspicious. But the way the story just goes, you just kind of go and you don't really linger on it too long. You just kind of continue. Much like that body that was found previously, like Lochter just kind of mentions it. You're like, okay, well, I guess there was a body that looked like it had been torn up by animals or something like that. And like you come to find out in this book, that was someone of significance and stuff. And it's just like, there's just a lot of that plays into there. So it's really interesting the way we kind of get this situation, and it adds to the rumor and this mythology of Giselle that's kind of being built up. So now he's this colonel. He's done all these great things at the edge of the world. He's put down the citizens' revolt and everything. So he's awesome. And all this time, we have a situation happening where the king of the union is dying. He's on his deathbed. So the way they appoint their kings, the entire council will vote and stuff, and they'll figure out who the king is. So as this plot line is going on, where Giselle is being colonel and stuff like that, we're cutting back to Glochter. And Glochter is basically coming back from the Oscars after having done all of that stuff he did over there. And basically at every moment he thinks he's going to die, get his throat cut, and be thrown into the river or something. And it's just, I love being in his head because it's so interesting. He expects himself to be so much worse than he is, even though he does horrendous things, completely unforgivable things, and just terrible things. So on paper, he's an absolutely horrible person. But like in his own mind, he feels like he is like the epitome of basically everything that he assumes anybody would think of him, like the epitome of darkness, the worst, evil, decrepit, cripple, evil person, torturer kind of person or whatever. But the core of who he is still a good person. So he always is questioning his activities and stuff. He's always basically condemning himself every time he does anything, because just the soul of who he is, he would have never been this person had he not been captured and tortured and stuff. So it's just really fascinating that Joe can write a character where you can see all these horrible things on the surface, but you get such a clear vision of the core of who that person is. So it's just really well done, which is actually a similar dynamic to Logan, because Logan has the same thing. He has this core, but with Logan it's a little more explicit. He's explicitly trying to be better than he has been. So he is explicitly trying to be a good person. But he has this berserker situation, which is never explained, which is really annoying. I assume it's got to be partial possession by the spirits or something related to that. No explanation, no answers, don't know. But whenever that takes over, he becomes the Bloody Nine. He becomes like absolutely evil to the point of killing children, which he does in this book. But it's almost like you're like, oh, it's not his fault. He has no real control over himself when that happens, and blah blah blah. But like in reality, it only seems to happen when he's severely injured in battle. So if you made that connection at any point in your life, then it should tell you should stay out of battle so that you should quit doing that and stop murdering innocent people or people that have nothing to do with the current situation. But he's not doing that, so therefore, does that make him not a good person because he should know that by now? Like, so everything's gray. Every character is gray. So I just love the fact that you can kind of ask these questions indefinitely and like it never really comes to a solid conclusion, because much like real life, everything has multiple layers, multiple reasons, multiple motivations, and all kinds of things tied to it. So I just really like the real nature of this kind of writing. It makes these characters feel like truly real people. So back to Giselle. So while Giselle's getting more clout and stuff with this reputation that Baez is basically engineering for him and stuff, he's just kind of confused. He's still like hanging out with Audie. They've been like, you know, spending nights together and stuff. And he's really like, at this point, he's like telling her he loves her every day and stuff. And like, he's really like, you know, I just want to quit everything and just like be with you. But after he was made colonel, he's like, oh, it's kind of hard because like this is a prestigious position. And I can, you know, so like the old Giselle is kind of pulling against this new one and stuff. So it's a really interesting kind of push-pull dynamic. All while Glocker is trying to threaten and bribe and blackmail in order to secure votes, in order to get the outcome to become the way that him and, or not him, but more not High Inquisitor, Salt, his boss, that guy, your eminence, as he refers to him all the time, like that guy. He basically wants I think he wants the power, or he wants somebody that he can make a puppet to be king or whatever. So Glocker's doing all this work trying to get all these votes and stuff together and everything. But little does he know, Baez has been, of course, working the plan. So right before they go into do the vote, Baez basically reveals that Giselle is the bastard son of the king, even though he's technically not. He reveals that, and then he basically hypes up the accomplishments that he's done as of late, putting down the citizen rebellion, accomplishing interesting things like first to cross the bridge at, you know, some bridge I don't even recall if they ever actually crossed when they were on their journey, and like just, you know, so all these rumors and stuff, you know, gassing them up and everything. So that plus the votes that Baez has long since bought, because he's 1,000 years old and probably has billions upon billions of marks. So he's bribed and probably blackmailed, and more probably just bribed and stuff to get people's votes. So they all vote for Giselle. So Giselle goes from being the winner of the contest, even though he didn't win because Baez also engineered that, which I really like that we get the roundabout explanation as to what was going on there. So so he goes from just basically being this fop to king because he's just purely an engineered figurehead. And so just the entire situation and the culmination and the creation of that, I was just mind blown. I love the way that happens. I love the way it works out. And I love that Glocker is just like, what? He's like, none of this makes any sense. Like, it's absolutely insane. So it's like, it's so interesting the way it kind of goes, and it plays into like everything else that Baez has been doing. So another character, Pharaoh, it's really interesting. The Pharaoh to me almost feels like an ancillary extra character, because she had a purpose and before they are hanged, but she wasn't able to fulfill her purpose as being the one that's able to touch the seed, because she has like demon blood, being a, you know, descendant and all that kind of stuff. So she wasn't able to fulfill her purpose, and her and Logan didn't stay together. So I'm like, what are we doing with this character? Like, you know, especially when she came back, it was kind of spelled out almost immediately when they got off the boat and stuff. She's just kind of lingering around, just hanging out. So she really had nowhere to go. She's still just, at this point, it's like, I just got to find some other weapon I can use against the Gurkish. And, so as it goes on, she's basically hanging around with Baez, and Baez is like, you might as well stick with me because my plan is still to use some kind of weapon against them, and you still want vengeance, so you might as well just kind of hang out with me, knowing full well Baez still has plans for her. But a thing happens later when Giselle is named king. She's like up in the audience and stuff, and when they name him, she just burst out laughing. I love the way in which it's described, because it's like the laughter of someone who just like hasn't laughed in probably 20 years or something like that. So like she doesn't know how to do it, and it's just I imagine this incredibly creaky, kind of awkward, almost gross sound. But like just knowing that it's Pharaoh Melchior just laughing her ass off, I don't know, I love it. So in the idea that her and Logan don't get together, I really like that because of the way it's a subversion of a common trope. Typically, when something like that happens, even if they have a falling out, they would make their way back together. Like Logan even tries to do it. He basically goes and try to tell her at the end like how he felt, but because of what she was going through, dealing with the aftermath of everything else, she just wasn't there mentally. So he just kind of gave up and assumed there was nothing there, and the feelings were one sided, and he just went back to the north. But I want to touch on some other stuff. So, all while all this stuff is going on, we still have West. Colonel West is way up in the north and stuff, and we have the other Northmen that have since joined his people, and they're fighting because they're all fighting Bethod. So we have the Northman crew. They basically go up to this fortress where they're trying to essentially orchestrate the final push up against Bethod, while West, after their Lord Marshal dies, basically their forces are halted on their way there because they don't have any command. And he's like, we still need to go help them, like they're our friends and stuff. Like, well, we don't have a Lord Marshal. We don't have anyone to give us like from top down command, so we just can't do anything until they name a new one. And West is like, this is really shitty because they helped us and they were really awesome and like we're supposed to be all cool and stuff, but we're not going to come to their aid and stuff. And but the thing that kind of works out with that is almost immediately after Giselle is named king, he's basically told he needs to make an appointment and stuff. And then when someone mentions Colonel West, he's like, West, Colonel Colin West, I want him to be my Lord Marshal and stuff. So they immediately like, after, of course, all they were pushing back on him and stuff, they didn't want that because they wanted to pick a noble and stuff. Because, you know, politicking and BS. But he basically names him and they kind of capitulate and allow it to happen because Baez was also being less forceful with his guidance at that point also, so he was on board with it. So West is named Lord Marshal and he's able to get the crew together. So they go up to the north and help finish off this fight where they eventually do defeat Bethod, where Logan gets to have the final battle with them and beat him up like wow. Like just the image it creates is just him bashing his head against the stone over and over and over and just throwing him off the side of the parapet and stuff. I'm like, that is a brutal death he had, and it was nothing like, you know, totally deserved. They also killed his witch ally, which was using a lot of magic and stuff, which is just like, she has this like charm speak situation where she's I think it was Dogman and Black Dow, I think. They were trying to go and kill her, and she's like talking, and she's like enchanted them and stuff, and it's very much like a siren song, kind of like Charm Speak from Hero of Ages by Rick Riordan. But it's just really fascinating. It's a kind of interesting ability. We've never seen it. We have no idea the scope or scale of the ability. We don't know where the ability comes from. We don't know how none of it works, and it's just one of the things as a magic lover and like a magic world building and just world building fan, it bugs the crap out of me that we don't get any explanation for it. But again, I understand that the point is the characters, not the setting or whatever. So all that kind of goes down, and so they kill the witch, they kill Bethod, so that entire thing is all done. But as soon as Logan kills him, like, he's named King of the Northmen, even though he doesn't think that the Northmen should have a king. So he's like, I don't want to do this, but you all have done it, and like, you've named me king, and now we can't undo it, more or less. So he just kind of deals with it. So eventually they basically all go back and they got to go help the Union because now they are in another war with the Gurkish. And it's kind of fascinating because you would think that these big wars and these big battles would take up either all three books or like be large parts or something. But the idea that a single book can have two large wars and neither of them feel truncated or like half-assed or anything like that, all while not even being the primary focus, like, that takes some skill in writing, I think. Like, that's pretty impressive. So the battle against the Gurkish, like, really, we kind of go into it, and the Union is fighting the Gurkish and stuff, and they're actually like getting into the city and burning the city down and all kinds of stuff. And we just kind of move away from that because, like, ultimately it wasn't the point. We get to the fact that the leader of the Gurkish army is actually another one of these Magi, who were, I think, also a student of Canadius, like Baez. I'm not entirely sure. I just know he's one of those old magic users who's also really old. So really, it's a grudge match between Baez and his sibling, pseudo-sibling, and like the others that are on their side that blame him for what he did in the past. I mean, which he did do in the past. His story on what happened in the past might be a lie based on what we learned about the character. I don't really think, I don't think like the because basically he didn't kill the Master Maker was what the thing is, but everybody thinks he did. Now I'm starting to think he did, and so when they get into the so before they deal with the rest of the Gurkish and stuff, because the leader is another one of these magi, they basically go into the house of the Maker again, which is he's got Pharaoh with him and got his apprentice and stuff. And one of the people that he knows is revealed to be like fifth of the Magi or something. One of not of the class of Baez, but like the next class. So he was taught by one of the other Magi of Baez's generation, essentially. So he's another powerful magic user and stuff, and they're in there helping. He's got like telekinesis and stuff. He's got, you know, interesting abilities. But when they go into the house of the Maker, it's revealed that one of the people they were with was actually Ptolemy, the woman that he supposedly fell in love with, which was the daughter of the Master Maker, or Canadius. I'm not sure if they're the same person or not, but was the daughter of the bigwig guy who was just like, in my head, she's kind of like a Pandora. She was like created to exist in the house of the Maker because the Maker needed someone of his blood to help with his magic using and all his, or his stuff he was creating or whatever. So Baez fell for her 1,000 years ago, and then it caused this huge conflict. But now she's some sort of wraith or something. She still lives. She's like bound to the house or whatever, but she left as a, you know, as a shape-shifted version of herself and stuff. But ultimately, they end up getting in a battle, and they realize the seed that they were looking for last book is in there. So which I think Baez definitely knew. That's why he basically got Pharaoh to stay with him and stuff. And she needed to go get it, and they had to use that box that they got last time in order to like seal it away and stuff. So they go through all that. But the thing that happens in this instance is Baez willingly abandons one of his allies, one of his oldest allies, and it's interesting. He completely abandons him in there and seals it up so that he's in there with Ptolemy and they're fighting. So because I am now completely flipped on Baez, and I'm pretty sure Baez is the long-lasting villain, I am now on Ptolemy and that other guy's side. I really hope she recruited him and they can figure out how to get out of the house of the Maker and go after Baez, because this level of manipulation cannot stand. But so it's just, I really like it. I can just keep rambling about it all day and other little tiny plot points. But something else that happens. So by the time they get the seed, the final thing that, well, not the final thing, one of the last things that kind of happen when they deal with the Gurkish, they get the seed. Baez uses the seed, or him and Pharaoh together kind of use the seed, and he kind of works some spells / use magic. And Canadius, I think it's, Juvens? Great. These names, man, I'm sorry. So the leader of the Gurkish, who is the guy who, you know, his longtime rival or whatever, he has the 100 words, which I thought were magic, you know, spells related at first back when it was mentioned. But they're the eaters. They're the ones that, so these are people that through eating human flesh get some sort of magical effect. It's not clear if they're like spelled and then they eat flesh to maintain those spells or something. I don't know. I don't know how it works. Again, I don't know how it works. But essentially, Baez uses Pharaoh, who has the seed. He channels the magic that is the seed and does some kind of spell working, which essentially obliterates half of the city. Like, it destroys half of Adua, and it's like, yeah, you won, but you killed so many innocent people. And Baez is like, I see this as a total good. We have totally won. This is all great. I abandoned my friend. I killed half the city. I installed a puppet king. I manipulated everybody in the north because I just needed cannon fodder. And just like all this kind of stuff just kind of comes out and stuff. And it's just like, wow. You just kind of sit there and like, wow. This one is a master manipulator and kind of an evil bastard, and it's kind of interesting. Like, I kind of like it. So it's just like, there's so many other little things too. Like, Glock that ends up marrying Audie because Giselle ends up getting married to some, you know, queen, princess or whatever in order to have noble kids and whatnot. And so she ends up being abandoned, but she's also pregnant because they have been sleeping together. So in order to protect her, because she now has like the king's illegitimate kid, so some of the people will probably try to kill her. Glocker is like, no, I don't want that to happen. So he basically convinces her to marry him, and they have to say that the kid is now his. So that's ought to be interesting. I hope something comes of that, because even though Giselle's not, you know, king by blood, he still is king. So that kid could have some political ramifications. Depending on the gender. I don't know how, you know, male, female, binary fuckery they are. They seem to be as fuckery as Earth is. I don't know. So that'll be something I'll learn in the sequel trilogy, or maybe some of the standalones. I don't know. Um, but what else do I want to talk about? What else do I like? I want to wrap this up a little bit. We're coming up on 30. We're past 30 minutes on raw footage. What else do I like? This the. So I guess we'll kind of wrap this up with kind of my concluding thoughts on the characters. So Baez is an interesting manipulative cur that's just a lot of fun. Logan, I love the fact that Logan ultimately at the end of all this he realizes, like, he learns that his life was paid for by Baez in order to be saved and not killed by Bethald. So essentially Logan, like, purely because Baez said he thinks he might have use for someone who can speak to spirits, and so that he's manipulated a good chunk of Logan's life simply for that reason. And Logan finds that out. He like, I don't care if you've done good things for me. I don't care if you've technically saved my life, whatever. Basically, he doesn't want any of Baez's influence, and he's just like, no, you come to the north, I'll kill you. Like, just don't even do this anymore. Like, and he just like fucks off, and he just like leaves or whatever. And so I'm totally on Logan's side. I really, really dig it a lot. So Baez manipulative. Logan's like the closest thing to a true free solid person that we have. Colin West ends up getting infected with the remnants of this disease that's caused because Baez uses the seed, because he essentially half broke the first law a little bit. So it causes this magical effect which causes what they call the wasting sickness, which seems to have the same effect as radiation poisoning. They're like deteriorating, wasting away and stuff. And West has like lost his hair and he's losing teeth by the moment and stuff. And his last scene is he's having a conversation with Glockton. And it was a really, really nice conversation, but I think West dies like right after. He's basically he's like commiserating with him about being crippled. He's like, oh, your cane will be your best friend, and like he's lost some teeth and stuff. And he's like, well, soup sucks, but it's soup and stuff. Like, it's just, they have this really commiserating kind of conversation. It's just like, dang, the closest thing we had to a character that was truly actually good, apart from him, being an abuser, like, he actually was like a, more or less closer to regular good than any of the other characters in the story. And he just kind of dies, like, just kind of unceremoniously, no honor. Like, it's very much real life. They even say it in the book. Not every death is going to be glorious on the battlefield, or doing something, or dying because you're trying to accomplish something. It can just be an incredibly mundane, basic, not flashy death. And that's kind of what he got. And it feels very realistic, but it's also like, dang. Everybody else is like still around, all these terrible people, except for I still don't think, even though Logan, when he turns to the Bloody Nine, it becomes horrible. I don't think he's terrible. So we got those three. And Giselle is in a gilded jail cell. He is pampered, but he is absolutely in chains. He has no rights to any. He basically can't make any decisions. He is 100% a puppet. And even to the point where his wife that was installed with him actually is a lesbian. So she doesn't like him, doesn't want to be with him at all. And she's literally suffering from the condition of just being born a woman in this world and being born a noble. So she's essentially been, treated like cattle. And then in order to get heirs, Glockner basically literally threatens to, not even threatening, like almost to the point of complete, just horrible, despicable shit. Like, he takes her girlfriend and threatens to have her like gang raped unless she has sex with Giselle, and she does it, and like, it's just like there's no justice. It's just, oh my god. But it's so real life, because how often did that happen in real life in history? Like, come on. Like, so it just has this tinge of realness, but it's just like, damn. It's just so that's kind of how his, and I almost even also feel bad for Giselle, because he's completely ignorant to it. Like, knowing who he actually is in the core of him, he would not want that for her. Even as an arrogant, like, self-absorbed kind of jackass that he is, he wouldn't want it. So it's just, you still just like, damn. It's just, I just can't, like, not to think, like, just damn. But, so, okay, that's Giselle, Logan, Glockner, and Baez. So West dies. Who am I missing? Pharaoh, after Pharaoh ends up getting some powers from using the seed, she like has strength, and like she jumps out of a window like 2 stories and it's totally fine. One of the people that was after one of the people that I assumed would have died in the explosion apparently didn't. And he comes back trying to kill her, and she discovers as he's trying to kill her that she has these abilities. She immediately kills him, and then she just kind of takes off. So maybe she's one of the short stories. That'd be really cool. I'd really like that. One of the standalones. And I think that's covering everybody. Glocker's going to be a daddy and raise Giselle's child. Logan. Oh, well, I guess we'll end it kind of talking about the way the book ends totally. I think I covered most everything. If I didn't cover something, let me know, of course, in the comments. And I almost said comics. In the comments, and we'll continue to talk about it. I'm very rambly right now. I'm trying to hold it together. So I really, really also just like the way this book ends. So we're back in the north. We're with Logan. Why do I got Wheel of Time in my head. I keep calling Logan. So Logan's back in the north, and he's just, doing his thing or whatever. And then we essentially randomly, well, he left Dogman. That's what I left out. Dogman and crew and stuff. Actually, Dogman might be the only regular good character. I mean, we don't get any we get some slight POVs. We don't know everything he does. But in terms of all the deeds of all the characters over the course of the 3 books, I think Dogman might be the only, good person. So that's kind of interesting. But, so he leaves him down in the Union and goes back up. And, you got Black Dow and Shivers and, the Bethal's kids, I think, are trying to essentially assassinate Logan. And he kills a couple of them and stuff, and then realizes he's probably not going to win against the other ones. And I love that the 3rd book, the end of this trilogy, ends in essentially the way the 1st book started. We get Logan jumping out a window, falling off a cliff, and falling into a river. And I love that because I don't know. I love the symmetry of it, I guess is what it is. And I love that it's almost described precisely the same, except we don't know if he lives. So I love that this doesn't feel like a typical story in that it has one basic storyline, one primary through line plot. This happens, that happens, all this happens, and then we're done. And then, happy ending or whatever. This has a very open-ended feel. Everybody, you can feel that all these characters' lives continue. Most fantasy books, at the end of it, you feel like, okay, it's all wrapped up, and you never think about it again. But this, it truly, to me, feels like every one of these characters' life continues on in a way that no other fantasy book has really made me feel. So I really like it. I think this is a great ending to a trilogy. I absolutely love this book. I think it's so much fun. There's some parts in it that are just hysterical. Just some of the humor in it is just so good. We'll talk more about that when I do a full series review. That'll probably be the next video, either this week or probably early next week. I don't know. I'm sticking with the 1 video a week thing to kind of make it easier on myself a little bit. So we'll see. Maybe it'll be 2. Maybe it won't. Play it by ear. I'm very unreliable in that way. So yeah, yeah, we've hit peak ADHD. So yeah. All right. With that being said, let me know in the comments down below. What did you like about the last Argument of Kings? Are you as excited about it as I am now, knowing that there's going to be movies? I'm really hyped because wow. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below. What did you think of the book? What did you think of the trilogy? What was your favorite character? What were some of the most underhanded, backstabby type things that happened that just kind of blew your mind? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's talk about it. So yeah, as always, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will talk to y'all next time. Peace.